So I've been trying to rationalize how that last part, that last hour or so of Root Double made me feel for a while now. And I think... Correct me if this is something that's been discussed before somewhere, but this is how that has made me feel. It's like when you're taking in a story, like the people telling the story, I feel like there's a certain rapport between people telling the story and the people viewing the story, where if the story's been, I guess, developed satisfyingly and is keeping you hooked, that gives you a certain, trying to put it right into words, that gives you a certain, I guess, leeway, so to speak, for when you start pulling twists and the like. You got a certain allowance for it, because the story's been working out in a really satisfying manner so far, so you have faith that it's gonna go in a direction that makes sense and works out in the end. And yeah, once we took the turn where our method of escape has been cut off, that we've certainly spiraled into a wild place, but it's still kind of kept up with that. Where there was just enough coming out to keep us hooked. And really, the last hour, like, even though we had the development of, like, everyone starting to get pushed to their limits, and Jun and Okita going batshit Hinamizawa syndrome on our asses. Even though we had that, and that's fucking wild, it feels like, for the first time, that balance has kind of been pushed, in my opinion, to the point where you're just fucking with me for the sake of fucking with me. Making things more mysterious, and I don't know how how the hell this could possibly be resolved. It's not over a line. I'm still gonna hold out that things are gonna come back together and make sense at the end, but it's the first time that balance, I guess, has been pushed in this game, and it started to grate at me last video. The one saving grace we have going for us here is that apparently we're getting close to the cutoff point in this game. I say cutoff point as in there used to be an embargo after a certain point in this game that you couldn't show footage of. That has obviously been lifted, but we're getting close to that, which means that we gotta be getting close to some pretty serious reveals and resolutions here. So, we have that to look forward to. That's pretty much keeping me going. On that note, we left off here. Anna's head dangled limply. I was gonna make the argument that they now filled us with just enough doubt that we might be fucking seeing shit now. But I don't think we actually touched Yuri's body when we saw her. This time we're clearly holding her, so her body was still warm. So anyways, after that critical analysis of why I'm annoyed, Anna's fucking dead. Her body was still warm. Watase pressed his fingers against her neck. No pulse. None. He checked her pupils. They were dilating. He then took off his vital checker and wrapped it around Anna's wrist. All 5 lights shone red. There's a bullet hole gouged through her forehead that exited out the back of her head. There was no need to check anything else. Anna was dead. Watase found himself utterly speechless. Before long, a sound escaped from his chest. There was no one there to answer his question. Anna's now dull eyes were staring off into space. Watase held Anna's body to his chest. He could feel the remaining warmth in her body slipping away little by little. He lost track of the passage of time. Once the heat from Anna's body had completely vanished, Watase rose to his feet and lifted her body in his arms. Watase left the connecting passageway carrying Anna on his back. She had been trapped in that passageway when they'd first come across her. So he wanted to take her out of there and lay her to rest in a quiet room at the very least. Room where he'd last spoken to her. Watase kept walking as he felt her weight on his back. He didn't want to think about anything. Yet for some reason, memories of her came, rising and vanishing in his head like bubbles with each step he took. She told him that when they first met. At first he'd thought of her only as an unpleasant woman who just complained all the time. Before long, her attitude began to change little by little. She began looking at Watase in a new light after witnessing him put his life at risk time and time again. God, remember this when we were both still not crazy? Over time, they had gradually come to understand one another. Though she would scold him at times, her words would help Watase press onwards. Trapped in this hell with death hovering behind them, they looked for the survivors and a way to survive together, but then... Just when we were finally getting through to each other, she was no more. Her sharp tongue, keen eyes, and smile had been forever lost. Damn it. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Wanted to cry, but he didn't. Felt like Enna would scold him if he did. So Watase just cursed himself. The only tears he shed were in his heart. Made it to the room soon enough. He laid her on the floor there, then quietly left. Then smashed the door's opening mechanism so no one could get in. With no coffins in the facility, this was the only burial for her he could come up with. Decision. Watase stood there in a daze for a while. Eventually came back to his senses, only to have the weight of the life he had just lost crush him once more. God damn it. Watase gritted his teeth as he stood in front of that sealed room. Why am I so damn powerless? If only I were my true self with all its memories, I would just No, I would have saved Teach for sure. He had no AD. His time limit grew shorter with each passing moment. Even if he started searching now, he had but a slim chance of finding more AD, and he knew that. He couldn't find an exit. He'd lost the trust of his comrades, and to top it all off, even Enna had been killed. Is this the end of the line? He'd better to just give it all up and call it quits. Watase was assailed by his powerlessness. His heart felt as if it would sink into darkness at any moment. So in the end, I can't save anyone the way I am now. At that moment, he remembered something the commander had said in one of his transmissions. Oh. I get it. So if you could just put out the fires in Area N, and the security system would stabilize, the lockdown would lift, and we could all get out of here safe and sound. There was a melted-down nuclear reactor in Area N. The place was filled to the brim with radiation. Once he went in, he was most likely never coming out. Huh, so what? He'd have been lying if he said he wasn't scared. Watase no longer valued his own life at all. He would end this nightmare as soon as possible and ensure that at least one person escaped to the surface. That was the only way he could atone for letting Enna die. Stop scolding me, Ghost Enna. Watase heard Enna's voice scolding him in his head. Watase muttered that and walked off. He headed for Area N, home of the burning reactor. Watase's Procyon started beeping louder than he'd ever heard it before when he opened the connecting passageway gate to Area N. Procion's display was giving off a reading far greater than he'd ever seen before. That's a lot of radiation. He was then assaulted by an intense headache and severe nausea. His skin was numb and his vision grew blurry. Watase turned his Procyon off, then kept walking. Nuclear reactor's right behind this gate. Melted down reactor, raging hellfire, an extremely lethal dose of radiation. Watase shuddered as he imagined that hell on Earth waiting for him right up ahead. But oh man. Watase kept himself from shaking, then pulled a hose out from the nearby fire hydrant. Held it with his left hand, the security card at his right. Extinguishing preparations all set, let's roll. Genuine danger lay just up ahead. Watase did not falter. Grim determination was coursing through him. He suddenly broke out into a smile. Teach, perhaps I've finally become a true rescue worker. He then took the card in his hand. We're gonna get stopped and open the gate. No! Oh boy. At that moment he felt as if he had stepped into a raging storm. Visible force broke over his body with earth-shattering power. Watase stood his ground and opened his eyes, then saw what lay on the other side of the gate. Oh. Watase gasped in the face of that sight. Standing on the other side of the door was a gigantic hall filled with a faint sound of running machinery. What the hell indeed? Alright, now you got me. There's supposed to be a melted down nuclear reactor there. There's supposed to be fires causing the security system to go haywire there. Yet all he saw was a cold, empty room.
どういうことなんだ。炎上する原子炉ってのはどこにあるんだ。
Watase threw the hose aside and looked around. A transparent cylinder stood in the center of Area N, surrounded by 6 towering spire-like installations. Those installations all connected to each other near the ceiling, forming a hexagram.
この機械は
Watase staggered over to that device. Now that he thought about it, he didn't really know what a nuclear reactor looked like. But he had a feeling that what he was looking at was no nuclear reactor.
ちょっと待て。そういえば、さっき先生が見せてくれた文書には。
Watase strained his brain to remember the words he'd seen earlier. See, the words in that search list were Case N, Meltdown, Brain Dysfunction, Subject N, WX Particle, Particle Amplifier, WX Particle Spread.
おかしい。
Finally realized what had been the source of that uncomfortable feeling he'd gotten back then. Though Case N and Meltdown had shown up on that list, terms that should have been there weren't. And up to a single sign of the terms nuclear reactor, radiation, radioactive material, or radiation exposure. Instead, there were mysterious terms like WX particle and particle amplifier. It was clearly strange. Watase couldn't explain it. However, he felt that the answer lied in this room. See, now, I'm down with this. I don't know what's going on, but I love it.
火災が起きてないってだけじゃない。
There's no anything here.
もしかしてここには
Everything about radiation leaking, was that a lie?
原子炉自体存在しないんじゃないのか。
Watase's shout was full of astonishment.
どういうことだ。俺たちは騙されていたのか。誰に何の目的で。
His confusion begot more questions. Felt like he'd heard the same words being screamed at some point in the past. Did the commander lie to us? Why would he ever do that? No, the ones I should be doubting are the staff of Labo. So does that include Old Man Ukita too? Probably. From what Watase had seen from how everyone had acted, it seemed the entire city believed that Labo housed a nuclear reactor. And why did the people running Labo lie about that? What meaning was there in putting on such an elaborate ruse to fool the townspeople? Watase's head hurt again when he thought about that. Uh-oh. It felt far worse than any of his other headaches. All his wounds and skin also began to hurt at the same time. Is this thing actually giving off radiation, or is the... It feels like we've had legitimate reactions when going into areas the Procyon was giving off high readings for, but is that actually radiation or what? His headaches feel separate from the radiation issue, and yet at the same time it seems like there's a radiation issue. To make matters worse, his body started shaking for no apparent reason. Wait, these convulsions... Frantically looked around, hoping to find an exit. Instead, he spotted a strange object. Something was lying on the ground further up ahead. He staggered on over to it and picked it up. It was a security card that had been split in two. The name of the card was Natsuhiko Tenkawa. The security level was level N. Just then an unpleasant stench suddenly took hold of Watase's nose. It was a familiar stench. albeit 100 times worse than any past experience he'd had with it. The stench of blood. Bad feeling rose in Watase's heart as he took a look behind the device. The boy garbed in his school uniform was lying there. His body was collapsed in a vast pool of blood. Isn't that Natsuhiko Tenkawa? His name and face matched up perfectly with Watase's memory of him.
おい、大丈夫か?
But Natsuhiko didn't respond to his calls. Watase took off his gloves and pressed his index finger against Natsuhiko's carotid artery. He couldn't feel a pulse, and Natsuhiko's body was growing colder and colder.
死んでいるのか?
Watase took off his vital checker and strapped it on Natsuhiko's arm to find out. All red, vital signs flat. Watase looked over Natsuhiko's body to find that there were several small holes and wounds here and there behind his uniform.
重装?
The sight of them was no longer as shocking to Watase after having seen so many of them before. The blood oozing from those wounds hadn't dried yet. Does that mean he only just died right before I got here?
死なせねえ。死なせてたまるかよ。
Watase laid Natsuhiko flat on the floor and began CPR. Just do it like Tachibana and Moribe did. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths.
頼む。頼むから、生き返ってくれ。
Watase withstood his headaches and convulsions in his desperate attempt at CPR. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. Like Kazumi and Jun's attempt, it was equally as fruitless. However, no matter how many times he tried, the boy's heart remained still. He was dead. He passed away all alone in this vast, empty hall. Watase hung his head feebly as he stayed where he was. The boy had undoubtedly been alive just a few minutes ago. I feel like we sat out, waiting for Anna to do something, and we missed something fucking horrible going down. Probably been struggling to hold on to life as he awaited rescue. But Watase hadn't made it in time. He failed to save a life that he'd been charged with saving.
なんでだよ。なんでなんだよ。ここまで来て、ようやく見つけることができたってのに。
Watase's shouts echoed through the hall. Uh-oh, someone else is here.
俺は
Watch, it's the
また間
others.
に合わなかったのか。
Who could this be? It's gotta be... the other kids, probably. Just then, Watase spotted something out of the corner of his eye. Eh? Something with a black luster was lying next to Natsuhiko. Gun! There's no doubt about it, it was a pistol. Probably the weapon that had robbed the boy of his life. Just like how Anna had been shot through the head with one of these. He didn't know who'd killed them. Watase felt like the pistol was the cause of it all.
こんなものがあるから。
Watase picked it up and was about to throw it to the ground, but then, in the worst timed appearance of all time, Watase felt his presence behind him. What? Omae wa mou shinderu. He turned around, then saw it. Nani? Someone with a tiny frame was charging straight at him. In their hand was... an axe? Oh. Just as Watase realized that. Hey, Captain, hey. The figure swung the axe down towards the crown of his head. I gotta axe you. Oh shit. Watase strafed to the side to dodge the sudden swing. Okay, we jumped scenes here. Which tells me that there's a possible chance, there's a possible path we could get here to save Natsuhiko. So we jumped out of that area end scene to Natsuhiko's death, back to area end briefly, and now she's got to access a question. Standing there was none other than it was Salyu, the girl who had run away from him twice now. A light as cold as ice shimmered in the depths of her eyes. Gripped in her hand was a burnt axe. She got the fire axe. It was the one that had been clutched in the hands of his deceased co-worker, Hiyama. The one that had mysteriously disappeared later on. That answers that question. Watase had been wondering this whole time who had taken it, and now... Salyu ignored Watase's question. Oh shit! And charged straight at him again. Fucking Salyu missile. Salutations, Watase. Whoa. She was aiming for Watase's neck. He barely leaned back in time, leaving the axe to slice only through air. The weight of the weapon was throwing her around, causing her to sway forward heavily. Now. Immediately grabbed for Salyu. She swung her leg up a second earlier. Oh shit. Wow! She made use of her centrifugal force to launch a swift kick, connecting solidly with his temple. Oh Jesus. Watase's brain rattled and his vision grew dark. Despite that, he still managed to quickly thrust Salyu away. Then jumped back and put some distance between them again. He was greeted with a cold look on Salyu's face when his sight came back. What's she doing? Axing you a question? She attacked without the slightest hesitation, using battle techniques that didn't befit a girl of her size and age. Worse, Watase's headaches and convulsions were only getting stronger. It's likely he'd die for real if he fought in this condition. And fighting with the pistol, his first natural choice, was simply not an option here. Damn it, I've got to find a way to subdue her without getting her hurt. As he thought that, he noticed that Salyu's body was faintly trembling. She was convulsing the same way Watase had been for a while now.
Oi, 君もまさかこの頭痛を感じてるのか? だったらさっさとここから逃げろ。自分の身を危険にさらしてまで俺と戦って何になる?
Salyu suddenly stopped in what appeared to be surprise. Again?
また?
あなたは前回も私に同じことを言った。
なんだと?
Watase's body froze with surprise and confusion. When was this last time? When did this girl and I... That moment of confusion left Watase wide open. Oh shit! Salyu charged at him yet again! Shit! Can't hold out next time, I'll be done for. Watase thought that, his body moved on its own. Eh? Watase then lowered his body as if he was putting himself into a crouch start for a 100-meter dash. He filled his legs with strength and released it all at once and sprung at Salyu. Her face was filled with shock. Watase tackled her with the force of a bullet the second later, hitting her right in the waist. Spear! My God! The axe slipped out of Salyu's hand as she fell on her back. Watase used his remaining momentum to straddle her. Unclear conclusion. Watase came to his senses, only to realize he was pinning Salyu down. What? The actions he'd taken just now had clearly been etched into him instinctively through training. They were obviously not skills needed to save lives. Uh-oh. Where did I ever pick up a skill like that? Sally glared up at him, her eyes seething like cold blue flames. Watase shook off the chills running down his spine and tried reasoning with her.
どうして襲いかかってきたりしたんだ。頼む、教えてくれ。俺には訳がわからないんだ。
Salyu's eyes moved just then. Gaze was now focused on Natsuhiko.
もしかして俺が夏彦を襲ったと思ったのか。だとしたらそれは誤解だ。
Salyu then spoke in a near inaudible voice. Watase brought his face closer to hers to hear her a lot better. Headbutt.
私でも見抜けるような見えすいた嘘はやめて。
それはどういう。
But Salyu moved her right hand as fast as lightning before Watase could finish. Ow! She poked him in the eyes, temporarily blinding him. Watase felt Salyu slipping her body out from under him at the same time. Crap, I gotta put some distance between us. Watase had no way of dodging any axe swings at this time. Shit. Watase blindly stretched out his hands in the darkness. His left hand came into contact with something. With the sensation of cloth. Sleeve. Watase grabbed onto it and focused solely on pulling it toward him. Salyu's gasp echoed through the darkness. Watase kept clutching onto her with his left hand while his right hand remained free. I have to defeat her right here and now. Watase's body, spurred on by his ever-growing fear, filled with fierce strength. Then used his right hand to grab her. Uh-oh. I don't like the sound of that. He then used his right hand to grab her wrist. We're about to do a bad. Salyu still tried to move the axe in spite of that. Watase filled his right arm with as much strength as he could muster and flung Salyu in the opposite direction of the axe. Jesus! Found that her body was lighter than he'd imagined. Then heard an extremely unpleasant sound reverberate through the darkness. Uh-oh. Unnatural silence then filled his surroundings. That's not good. That's not good at all. Watase had no clue what just happened. However, he felt goosebumps spread over his body and cold sweat travel down his spine. His vision soon started to slowly fade back in like a focusing camera. Watase was rendered speechless by the sight that greeted him. He found himself face to face with Salyu. Rather, Salyu, after she'd hit her head hard on one of the 6 giant pillar-like devices that surrounded the hall. Blood was spreading by the second at the base of the device. Jesus. Salyu's body convulsed over and over again. Soon stopped. Watase staggered on over to Salyu. But all of her muscles had gone limp, and her now dull eyes were staring off into space.
嘘だろ。俺が殺しちまったのか。
Watase knew better than anyone else that there was no other possibility. The sensation of when he'd flung Salyu away still lingered in his right hand. With nothing to vent them out on, Watase's feelings emerged in the form of a scream. He never meant for this to happen. He had more or less been filled with a killing rage just before he'd flung Salyu.
俺はなんてことを。レスキュー隊員の俺が人を殺しちまうなんて。
He'd crossed a line for which he could never come back. His guilt overwhelmed him and tears began streaming down his face.
サリュー。すまない。すまない。すまない。すまない。すまない。
No amount of apologizing it would ever bring Salyu back to life. Watase staggered out of Area N into stupor. Well, that went well. He then started madly muttering to himself.
すまない先生俺はあんたの生徒を2人も殺しちまったんだ
I mean, you might not have killed Natsuhiko? Unless you did and you're just forgetting about it for the sake of pretending to be a protagonist. Watase had no clue where he'd eventually ended up. He was clutching the gun from Area N for some reason. I guess we're all gonna die now. Why in the world did I take this with me? Maybe we were right about... Maybe everyone was right about Watase, and he did rescue all of these scientists and shit from life. Was I planning to blow my brains out with this thing? It wasn't implausible. Guilt of having murdered someone had cast dark clouds over Watase's thoughts. Just then...
おやおや隊長さん、こんなところで何をしているのかね。
I turned around and found Ukita standing there. The warped smile on his face and a gun in his hands. Watase saw him and started muttering in what almost sounded like delirium.
おっさんその銃は
これかい？これはもちろん君に裁きを下すための道具だよ。
裁きを下すための道具
The word justice tugged at Watase's recently born guilt and tormented him. Does that mean the old man saw me kill Salyu? Is that why he's come to pass judgment on me? That thought crossed Watase's hazy mind for a moment. No, wait, that all went down in Area N. There's no way the old man could have seen it. He doesn't have a level N card. Now that I think about it, doesn't the old man only have the gun itself and nothing else? Someone killed Anna. So how's he planning to pass judgment on me without any bullets? Kita started talking in a gleeful voice just as Watase pondered that thought.
おっと、動かないでくれよ隊長さん。この銃はもう完全品なんだ。下手な真似はやめておいた方がいい。
完全品おっさんそいつはどういう意味だ
Obviously they took the bullets off of Anna.
だってその銃の弾丸と弾倉は森部と先生が別々に
Just as he said that, the sight of Anna's dead body flashed through Watase's mind.
そうかあんただったのかあんたが先生を
だったらどうだというんだね。君らは僕の思いを踏みにじったんだ。報いを受けるのは当然だろう。
報いかだったらあんたにもその報いを
Watase muttered that as he slowly raised the gun in his hands up.
動くなと言ってるだろう。
Ooh! Kita's shot grazed Watase's face. Watase felt a hot stream roll down his cheek. Blood was slowly seeping out of the wound. Watase ignored it and fixed his aim on Ukita.
先生の仇だ
With that low growl, Watase pulled the trigger. Ukita screamed as he curled into a ball. Watase had missed. Watase gritted his teeth and got ready to shoot Ukita again. Ukita fired blindly at Watase as he frantically ran about in an attempt to escape. The second shot veered past Watase's right. The third shot hit him right in his left flank. Watase grunted for the impact of the bullet. However, I don't give a damn if I die here. Watase ignored the pain and shot at Ukita again. Could never forgive Ukita for killing Anna. That rage spurred Watase on to pull the trigger again. But he couldn't hit Ukita no matter how hard he tried. I am somewhat enjoying this. Watase kept mercilessly shooting at Ukita's back as the latter ran away pathetically. However, failed to land a single shot on Ukita. By the time Watase was out of ammo and came to his senses, Ukita was long gone. Watase angrily tossed his unloaded pistol onto the floor. When at the very end he couldn't do anything. And then we're getting conflicting evidence again. We have his sudden instinctive spear and takedown attack. And then we have him completely missing a man at point-blank range. Again, stormtrooper gun accuracy here. Not even take Ukita's life. Why? Already killed Salyu, haven't I? What difference is another murder or two?
なのにどうして俺は
Even now, he was still as utterly pathetic and useless as he had been at the start, despite everything he'd been through.
やるんだ笠崎渡せ。あいつは先生を殺したんだ。あんな奴を殺すぐらい今のお前ならどうってことないはずだろ。
Watase steeled his resolve and tried to pursue Ukita. Just then he heard footsteps echoing from right behind him. What? A second later. Jun. Dull pain ran through the back of his head. Sparks flashed in his eyes. Felt all the strength in his body give way right after that. His face was closing on the floor second by second. He tried to place his hands on the ground. His body wouldn't move. Too late. Watase crashed onto the floor cheek first. Ugh. Hit me. Couldn't have been Ukita. No way he could have had enough time to circle around Watase. Then heard a voice calling to him from above.
ごめん隊長、こんな乱暴なことをしちゃってさ。
Don't you jump scare me with your face. Isn't that Oribe's voice?
でも隊長はもう寝た方がいいんだよ。だって脇腹打たれちゃってるし。だからさ、浮田さんのことは私に任せてよ。
You're back? Wait. Watase tried to say that, but his voice wouldn't come out.
隊長、本当にごめんね。私、隊長のこと誤解してたよ。悪いのは全部あいつだったのに、隊長のことを疑っちゃったりしてさ。だから安心して。隊長の手を汚させたりなんかしないからさ。辛いけど、浮田さんは私がちゃんと殺すから。
Jun then stopped talking and walked away, the sound of her footsteps gradually growing fainter and fainter. Watase desperately tried to call out to her. Wait, you don't have to do that, Moribe. Hands have already been stained. So you don't have to kill the old man. He couldn't put those thoughts into speech. Watase rapidly blacked out as he heard that unpleasant sound. Give me a scream, give me a scream, give me... Nah, okay. Ringleader.
非常用電源が送電限界に達しました。
Oh, that's not good. How long had he been passed out for?
以降、無停電システムに移行。
Watase woke up to the sound of an emotionless, artificial voice. He sat up and looked around to find his surroundings buried in darkness.
なんだ停電か
Watase shook his throbbing head and glanced at his watch. Time displayed on the faintly glowing LCD was 5:50 p.m. Weird, he'd been unconscious for 2.5 hours.
俺はなぜ
Remembered everything up to getting hit in the back of the head and passing out. That it was Jun who had been responsible for that. His blurry thoughts then soon gradually became clearer and clearer again.
だから安心して。隊長の手を汚させたりなんかしないからさ。辛いけど。浮田さんは私がちゃんと殺すから。
That's right. That sound I heard right after that.
あれはエンジンカッターの。なんであの時そんな音が。
Good question.
まさか森部のやつあんなものでおっさんを倒しに行ったのか。
That would be hardcore. That would be metal as hell, Jun, but... Terror overcame Watase when he made that connection. Then felt a pain in his side. Oh right, I've been shot. Looked there to find blood oozing down. It's the bullet wound he'd gotten from Ukita.
バカ野郎、おっさんは拳銃を持っているんだぞ。
Pistol versus an engine cutter. Jun was at an overwhelming disadvantage no matter how one spun it. Watase looked at the side to find the pistol he picked up in Area N lying there.
くそ。
It was out of bullets. Now Watase had no weapons. His head was still swaying from Jun's blow. If I leave things the way they are now, then Moribe will also... He didn't want to see any more deaths. Not his comrades, nor any more innocent people. Watase put a hand against the wall and stood up. Started walking as though he were dragging his body along. Soon found himself approaching a connecting passageway. All of a sudden, he noticed something lying in front of him. Watase studied it carefully as his nose was assaulted by a stench akin to rusted iron. Stench of blood. Watase felt shivers run down his spine as he realized that the air around him was saturated with it. Can't be. Watase cautiously approached the object. He could make out more and more of its features the closer he got. I think he'd spotted lying in the middle of the hallway. It was a small woman wearing a rescue worker uniform. Jun, no!
森部。
Watase staggered over to her and held her in his arms. Jesus! His arms were soaked with something slippery when he did.
おい。
Watase called out to Jun in an unbearably shaky voice. I was gonna say, I feel like... Oh boy. She didn't answer him. Memories of Jun then flickered through Watase's head at that moment.
で、私が森部純、消防士、20歳。今年入りたての新人隊員。異名はシリウスの女特攻隊長。キャッチフレーズはカンと書いて純と読む。以後よろしく。私があの網を外して向こう側に行く。体のでかい隊長より私の方が敵役だよ。よし、隊長。捜索するなら私も行くよ。何言ってんの。隊長一人で行く方が危険じゃん。
やめろ。くそ、縁起でもねえ。森部が死ぬわけねえんだよ。
Watase shouted that as he searched Moribe's body for wounds. Wanted to see if there were any chance she was still alive. There were 3 holes burrowed in her body. First was through the right shoulder, second was in the abdomen, third was right in the center of her chest. Blood was gushing out of every last one of them. Watase's gloves were already soaked to their core.
なんだよこれ。冗談だろ。な、おいモリベ、もういい加減返事をしたらどうなんだ。なあ、おいって。
Watase shook Jun's body. She never answered him. Jun had probably gone up against Ukita and lost. The engine cutter truly had been no match for a pistol in the end.
くそ。だからあの時。俺があの時、ちゃんとおっさんを仕留めておけばよかったんだ。
But it was too late for regrets. The only saving grace is that Jun had snapped out of it. Kita's face, brimming with madness, flashed through the darkness.
してやる。今度こそ絶対に殺してやる。
Watase broke out of it into a mad dash with a feral roar. When he made it out of the connecting passageway. Oh! Found Ukita sitting there, dead with blood pouring from his head. Watase was rendered speechless by that abrupt anticlimax. A bloody piece of debris was lying next to his corpse. Probably died after being hit in the head by it.
おっさんがここで死んでるってこと。
Meant the only other people still alive in this place aside from Watase were Kazumi and Mashiro Toba. Did it? Was the old man killed by Tachibana or Mashiro Toba? Couldn't see Mashiro Toba anywhere, and he didn't know a thing about her. That was the way it had always been. Which meant that the only suspect he really had was Kazumi, but... couldn't be Tachibana. Not in a million years. I mean, she didn't even have a motive to kill the old man. I mean, she wouldn't have normally, but... Just as that thought had hit him, something suddenly flashed through his head. No, hold on. If Tachibana witnessed the old man killing Moribe... Jun was like a sister to Kazumi. If Ukita shot Jun dead right in front of her, it wouldn't be all that implausible for Kazumi to want to kill him. Watase looked down coldly on Ukita's body and spat out his next words in a hateful voice.
おっさん、当然の報いだぜ。
Unless we killed him and we just don't remember either. You never know, but the moment we said that, felt like Sally was watching him, staring at him from beyond the darkness. Watase turned to her phantom and spoke.
ああ、わかってる。俺だっておっさんと同罪だ。
Watase turned around and started to walk away from Ukita's body, only to stumble over something. Could make out a silhouette in the darkness. Ukita was clutching the engine cutter in his hand. That didn't make sense. That had been Jun's weapon of choice. What?
どうしておっさんがこれを。
Bad feelings started worming its way into Watase's head. As far as he knew, Ukita had shot 3 people, Anna, Watase, and Jun, meaning that there was a plausible possibility he had run out of bullets after finishing Jun off.
じゃあ、このエンジンカッターはおっさんが森部から奪って。
Watase crouched down and touched the engine cutter. The blade was covered with something wet. Oh. It was a slimy liquid that had a unique stickiness to it. Watase took a deep breath and took out its PDA. Oh! He used the LCD's dim light to examine the engine cutter's blade. Watase's breath shook. It was just as he'd feared. The blade was indeed painted with blood.
まさか橘、お前まで。
Watase panicked as he used his PDA's light to illuminate the floor of the passageway. It had to be there. He just knew it. He found it. There was a line of blood drops there. Almost as if they were her footprints.
橘。
Watase ran through the hallway as he followed the blood trail. He just kept going on and on. Watase had no clue where she was heading. It just looked like she was wandering aimlessly, according to her footprints. Watase found himself praying as he followed them. Shibana, please, I'm begging you, please be okay. And arrived at B2 of Area 2's inner ring, only to find Kazumi collapsed in the middle of the dark hallway.
橘。
Watase ran over to her and held her in his arms. There was a giant laceration in her chest. Her body was still warm.
橘、しっかりしろ。橘。
Jesus! God damn! God!
橘。
It's fucking brutal.
大丈夫だ。安心しろ。すぐに医務室へ連れて行ってやるからな。
Watase said that and tried to lift Kazumi up. She just shook her head in refusal.
隊長、待ってください。
バカ野郎、喋るな。傷口に触る。
お願いです。私、どうしても隊長に聞きたいことが。だから私、あなたをずっと探して。
分かった分かったから。俺に聞きたいことがあるなら後でいくらでも答えてやるから。だから今は。
Watase was pleading to her. Could feel Kazumi's body grow colder with each passing word she spoke. Yet she continued to talk to him with trembling lips.
隊長、教えてください。私たちは一体何に巻き込まれたというのですか。
わからないんだよ、橘。俺にもそんなことは。
隊長、もう嘘はやめてください。浮田さんが言っていました。あなたが全ての元凶だって。だから教えてください。我々がどうしてこんなことになってしまったのか。
待ってくれよ、橘。どうして俺が全ての元凶なんだよ。俺はレスキュー隊の隊長のはずだろう。俺にそう教えてくれたのはお前じゃないか。だから俺はお前の知る笠崎渡瀬に少しでも近づきたくて。なのになんで。
でもそれではなぜあなたはあの時嘘をついたのですか。
Back when?
違う。俺は嘘なんかついちゃいない。俺は目覚めてから一度も嘘なんて。
私にはあなたがわからない。そう、あの時からもうずっと。
もういい、橘。やめてくれ。頼むからもう喋らないでくれ。
Suddenly realized that Kasumi's body had grown much colder. He could feel as much through his gloves.
お願い、答えて、私。
Kasumi's breath grew faint. Light was fading from her eyes.
おい、橘。
Kasumi muttered that in a shaky voice, then closed her eyes. Kasumi quietly breathed her last in Watase's arms. Silence once again filled the darkness. Watase stared at Kasumi's now lifeless face dumbfoundedly. Without anything to vent it out on, rage welled up in him from the pit of his stomach.
なんでだよ。なんでこんなことに。教えてくれ、立花。俺が全ての元凶ってどういうことなんだ。俺のせいなのかよ。みんなが死んじまったのは全部俺のせいだって言うのかよ。
That's certainly the impression that they're giving off by the fact that everyone seems to be gaslighting Watase for having no memory. And it might really be unveiled that we are part of some secret murder plot. I don't know. Watase's cries were devoured by the darkness. No answer came to him. I'll just say that if this first whatever is designed to make the play, is intended to make the player feel as frustrated as Watase for not knowing why everyone thinks they're so horrible mastermindy, then it succeeded. Because I am frustrated by that. No answer came to him. It was at that moment that something decisive snapped within Watase. The whole situation was so bizarrely humorous that he couldn't help but laugh.
そうか、すべて分かったぞ。全部橘の言う通りなんだ。本当は俺が全員を殺した犯人だったんだ。あいつら、あいつもあの子も。そうだ、それに途中で消えた有利だってきっと俺が殺したに違いないんだ。
That would explain why he has memory of it, even if he didn't actually find her.
あの記憶はあの時たまたま蘇っただけだったんだ。それだけじゃない。俺はあの少年だって。もちろんサリだって。それに先生や森部やおっさんや橘だって。きっと俺が全員をこの手で殺したに違いないんだ。
Watase looked at his gloves to find they were stained dark red with blood. How fitting. It wasn't just there. His entire uniform was splattered with the blood of others. What a fitting metaphor.
そうだ、間違いない。俺がみんなを殺した記憶を忘れているだけで、全てを自分の都合のいい記憶に書き換えてるだけで、俺はこのラボに火を放ち、爆破し、核壁に閉じ込められた全員を殺した殺人鬼だったんだ。
Watase then looked at Kasumi's face one more time.
なあ、橘、そういうことでいいんだよな。俺が全ての元凶ってのは、きっとそういうことだったんだよな。なあ、橘。なあ。なあ、橘。お願いだから。もう一度だけ、俺のことを隊長と呼んでくれ。
The most painful part about Kasumi dying was hearing her desperately calling him Watase near the end, instead of Captain. Kasumi's eyes remained shut, leaving Watase's wish to be swallowed into the darkness. For that, Watase blindly wandered all around Leibo. He searched for Mashiro Toba, the only survivor who hadn't been found. Was he a rescue worker or killer? He He planned to find the answer to that question by locating her and watching her reaction to him. A sudden question came to him as he continued prowling about. All of Leba was supposed to be a contaminated zone by now. Why wasn't he feeling any pain at all? That question soon meant nothing to him. In the end, no matter how hard he searched the place, Watase never found the 9th survivor. Okay. We're gonna leave this off here and see what happens next time. Until then. It had already been 9 hours since Watase had awoken with amnesia. He checked his watch to find that the time was 6:15 p.m. It wouldn't be long before the lockdown was finally lifted. Finally arrived in front of the closed bulkhead that led to the surface. None of his 5 companions, who he'd been through thick and thin with, were accompanying him. Nor were any of the 3 children they'd all tried to save. Indeed, the end of the nightmare was nigh. Reality will be waiting for me when I wake up from this nightmare. Watase thought about that as he looked at the red light shining on the bulkhead. That thought contained an unspeakable terror. Once that bulkhead opened, he could learn who the real Watase Kasasagi was. Was he a rescue worker, or a killer? The answer to that would most likely become clear once the crimes that had occurred in Leba were examined by more unbiased eyes. Once they saw the many corpses that littered the place. Those thoughts ran through Watase's mind until... Oh. Uh-oh. That's not good. Thunderous roar and vibrations rumbled at his feet and were closing in on him. Watase then turned to the emergency staircase behind him, only for shockwaves and heat to come surging forward with the roar. Oh boy! Maybe we shouldn't have been waiting there. I could hear a sound echoing from somewhere. Watase's consciousness was in a shattered world. Sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, all of his senses had been ravaged. His eyes were open, yet he could barely see anything. He couldn't even tell how far away that sound was, much less what direction it was coming from. The only thing that was clear to him was the stench of something burned. His sense of taste had completely vanished. Top it all off, he couldn't move his body an inch. I guess we're fucked. He didn't even know if he still had limbs or not. Didn't feel like there was a world around him for him to experience at all. What just happened? Light flooded into Watase's presently disconnected field of vision. Oh boy! The 2 test subjects. NBC counter. What? What are they talking about? Just then Watase's blurry eyes caught sight of the letters NBC written on the men's protection suits. The men started carrying him somewhere as the meaning of those letters remained a mystery to him. Watase desperately rose his voice in the midst of this endless nightmare. who in the hell was the man known as Watase Kasasagi? What the hell happened here in Labo? Someone, tell me. All that emerged from Watase's throat were indecipherable groans of agony. Soon enough, his consciousness began to fade away. Wow, okay. Tenkawa Miyoko, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Ojima Hiyama, Eraguchi Suya, Kashiwagi Ryokin, Commander of Sirius, others. Yeah, once again, OBS isn't picking up video credits. I'll have to find those.
それではこれより先日のラボ爆発事件に関する第3次報告をさせていただきます。まず皆さんもすでにご存知かとは思いますが、事件の概要から。事件が発生したのは9月16日午前6時19分。ラボの地下エリアにて同時多発的に爆発と火災が起こったことが発端になります。そして同日6時26分、緊急災害マニュアルに従って救助要請を行った特別高度救助隊シリウスが現場に到着。ラボの地上エリアにて救助活動を開始しました。ほどなくラボの地下エリアにいた研究員および職員の避難は一部の例外を除き終了しました。しかしシリウスの隊員5名が職員の勧告を無視して地下へ侵入。同隊司令長との連絡も途絶。ラボ内で KSN が発令されたのはその直後7時15分のことでした。それからラボ内で起こったことに関しては不明な点が多いのですが、少なくとも12時20分まではシリウスの隊員3名が救助活動を行っていたことが同隊の通信記録に残っておりました。そして18時17分、ラボ中心部で大規模な爆発が発生。ラボの地下エリアと地上エリアを閉鎖していた隔壁が開いたのはその2分後になります。
Ogame City Parapsychology Research Center, Underground Conference Room. Researcher read the report in his hands with a voice devoid of emotion, only to suddenly be interrupted by Dr. Tenkawa.
それで、ラボ内で発見された遺体の身元調査はどうなりましたか？
それにつきましては別紙に詳細を。大まかに申し上げますと、発見された16体の遺体のうち研究員3名、被験体2名、特別監視対象2名、監視対象1名。
Researchers, test subjects, special observation targets, observation
コミュニ
target.
ケーター管理官3名、シリウス隊員4名、同隊監視対象1名。
Four members of Sirius, and one observation target who was also a member of... Oh, was that Watase?
以上、16名全員の身元が判明しております。
Let's run through this again. 3 researchers, 2 test subjects, 2 special... Jesus, that's a lot of people. Kazumi Jun, Dojima, and Yama. 1 observation target who was a member of the squad. Watase, I'm guessing. 3 communicator commissioners. はい。
つまり残念ながら博士のご子息とそのご友人は。
ですが、あの子たちはなぜあんな日にラボの地下にいたのでしょう。
警備員によりますと、ご子息は事件当日博士に用事があると言ってラボを訪れていたようです。警備員が気づいた時には行方不明になっていたとのことですが。
私に用事？まさかあの子たち。
どうなさいましたか博士。何か心当たりでも？
教えていただけますか？今回の一件は事故だったのか、それとも人為的な事件だったのか。
何らかの理由で NBC が発生した可能性もあり、結論はまだ出ておりません。ですが、数日前から鹿鳴市内で様々な事件が頻発していたことから推察するに、六課では今回のラボ爆発事件が何らかのテロ行為であった可能性が極めて高いとみて調査を実施しております。
テロ、やはりそうだったのですね。六課の方々に私からお願いがあります。すぐに私の息子天川夏彦のここ数日の足跡を追ってください。あの子は事件発生前にテロリストの存在に気づいていました。あの子が何を知り、どうしてラボにいたのか解明できれば、今回の事件がどうして起こったのか知ることができるはずです。だから。
了解しました。すぐに調査を開始させましょう。
At the same time, Rokume City Hospital, ICU. His consciousness was still trapped in that 9-hour-long nightmare played with sin. Even at that very moment, a man nothing more than a living corpse who had been publicly and legally declared dead couldn't hear the voices calling for him to wake up. His nightmare would never end. Not as long as he himself didn't wish to awaken from it. Game over. A normal ending. Conclusion from despair. Oh. Result of wasting way too much time and being too late to save Natsuhiko or anyone else. There are senses inputs on this route that cause you to waste too much time. You'll be able to avert this fate by minimizing the time you wait. Whoa!